KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
You are listening to KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas, Fort Worth. Pledge now. Call 972-647-1893 now to make your pledge.
Get off my lawn.
Watergate! Watergate!
Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn. Welcome back to KNON Community Radio, the best radio station in Dallas. We're going to talk about school reform, something we've talked about here before. It's coming to a head next week because the school board is going to see the list of principals that are being replaced, and that's a big deal, controversial issue. It's a story in the news this morning about a walkout of students at Madison High School on MLK in South Dallas. They walked out in defense of their principal, Marion Willard. She and Leslie Swan at Lincoln are among a bunch of principals who are apparently going to be on this list to be replaced. And Swan and Willard are especially popular in their community. So there's been a lot of controversy and pain over the possibility of their leaving. This is all part of a big district-wide campaign to achieve a revolutionary change in the schools aimed at student achievement. And we've talked about that here before. I wanted to talk about it again this week because, as I say, it's coming to a head next week. In next week's Dallas Observer, I'll have a cover story about school reform. I think the morning news may have something, rumor tells me, that they're going to have something Sunday. Some of the same people I interviewed were interviewed by them, and they told me the news had a big piece coming out. There's this a thing on the op-ed page of the morning news today that kind of captures some of the pain and I think a lot of the misunderstanding around this thing. It's a well-written, moving essay by a lady named Marty Walker, who's a longtime DISD teacher. In 1996, she won their Golden Apple Teacher of the Year award. She's won, according to the notes at the bottom of the thing in the news today, she's won statewide teaching awards, and it sounds like she's a great teacher. But here's the deal. Here's the problem, and I think it's stated clearly but unintentionally in this piece. She starts off saying, do the schools need to change? Well, no. First she starts out saying, are the schools where they need to be? She says, of course not. Data reveals that we have failed miserably in many areas. But then she goes on to say that she has serious concerns. She says, from my readings, discussions, and understanding about our current leadership, there seems to be a misguided notion that we must constantly churn up everything on more than 225 campuses. And what I'm going to say this morning is I don't think that's true. I don't get that at all. I've been covering this thing and talking to people on all sides of it for some months now. I haven't heard anybody say that we have to churn up everything on every campus, on all 225 campuses. We're talking about leadership changes on 50 campuses. And leadership changes don't mean that all the teachers have got to go. They don't necessarily, and I'll get into this later in the show, they don't necessarily mean that the teachers are doing anything wrong at all. But they mean that the school district thinks that some of those schools need different principals to lead them, different kind of team builders. Now, later on in her piece, Ms. Walker gets into some of the stuff, and you have to read between the lines a little bit, that's kicking around the district. She says, do not, she's talking to somebody, she doesn't say exactly whom, but I'm going to guess she's talking to the school superintendent, Mike Miles. Do not force great teachers and leaders out of DISD because of militaristic tactics. As far as I know, there's certainly no intent to force out the really great teachers and leaders. Those are the ones they want to keep. But what's this about the militaristic tactics? Well, Miles is former military. He's retired from the military before he went into education. So his tactics are militaristic, I guess, because he used to be in the military. I don't know. If you talk to Miles, and I've been able to talk to him a few times, not a whole bunch. He's a busy guy. He has other stuff to do instead of talking to Dallas Observer columnists. But if you talk to him, he sure doesn't come across as some kind of militaristic General Patton type. Instead, he sounds pretty reasonable and cautious, and I would say that he expresses a lot of empathy for people going through this change. But anyway, we'll get to that. I want to pause and remind you that we're still in our pledge drive here at KNON. We're getting close, but we haven't hit the target yet, and we need to hit it in order to stay on the air. If you can call us up and offer help, it means a great deal to KNON. It means a great deal to the city. Call us at 972-647-1893, 972-647-1893. The deal is that this is a town where the media environment's very closely controlled. Ownership of the various media has constricted and collapsed into fewer and fewer entities. We're now a one daily newspaper town. That tends to affect the whole news cycle. It's really hard to get on some issues, I sort of rubber meets the road issues where the establishment, typified by the old Dallas Citizens Council, the private group that still runs things from behind the curtain, when they want their way, man, that's the only story you'll see on most of Dallas print media, TV, and radio. And KNON is one of the exceptions to that. Through these talk shows, a lot of disparate and diverse views are able to come to the fore. But we got to have your help to do that. It's 972-647-1893. And please call us up and make a pledge and help keep Dallas interesting. We got before I go back to the school thing, we got Tony on line too. Tony, are you calling about schools or what's up today?
It's about schools again.
Yes.
Now, it kind of what you were talking about, Washington Council and the DISD. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, Dallas One News Pub had 2 people from the Chamber of Commerce, Regional Chamber of Commerce, back Miles.
Right.
I guarantee you, their kids not go to DISD. But they support. And my thing is this: my thing about, I guess, Mike Miles is different from Dallas Tyson. Corporations have set policies in place and say, okay, we're not getting people who can write and do what we need them to do.
Yeah.
In public meeting when they come to us.
Right.
Now these are the same people who do not like liberal arts majors, but liberal art majors are people who are creative writers.
Right.
Think outside the box. So in one message they say, well, kids are going to school, take a middle English and math.
Sure.
going to business classes, graduating business schools, who cannot really write correctly.
Yeah.
But then, these are the same people who say, well, why do we have this arts universities?
Well,
now,
let me say, Tony, I'm with you in that, man, I'm not ready to turn the educational system over to corporate leadership. And I agree with you. The schools need to be independent, and I think there's some in this whole school reform thing. You got a bunch of different kinds of people involved, and some of them I'm suspicious of their agendas. I don't think they really believe in public education, but not all of them. And what's interesting is that in the fight over school standards down in Austin, for example, where there's been this effort to scale back some of the standards for kids, that was not led by corporations. That was led, the people who want to scale back the standards are like the Tea Party folks who don't want to pay taxes.
And I give you that. But and you're right. They scale it back. But they don't understand their kids and their grandkids are part of this process. So basically they don't want to educate their own kids in the future. But what I see is people like the Bro Institute or whatever it is, the Walmart people and the Gates people pushing these people to make school system like corporations. And when you come outside kids to this, special, we want STEM research and all this other stuff, what you're doing is saying is, okay, we want robots who don't want to think. I'm coming. And so...
You got the same issue at your house I have at mine. You can't stay on the phone because somebody's got you going out the door, right?
Yeah, so my thing is, I don't have anything against Mike Miles per se, but when you come in and you are a corporate-minded person, and everybody always says for the kids, but when you see Sandy Crest, who's a part of the DISD, who goes to Washington, who now is a lobbyist for the testing system, and all I see is corporations trying to milk corporate taxes from the people and then say, okay, it's better for the kids. But at the end of the day, corporations are getting rich off of our kids.
Tony, I appreciate your call, and I think your points are valid. And but let's go back to a basic question here. While we still got some time before that first break. Why are we doing all this? What is this all about? Why do we have to mess with the schools right now? What's wrong with them? First of all, there's a overwhelming amount of research showing that this isn't. We're not the Lone Ranger in Dallas, if that helps. This is a national problem, and the United States has fallen seriously behind in education, and it's going to cost us big time in terms of our role in the world, the standard of living that Americans are accustomed to, the standard of living Americans have kind of gotten to think they just deserve. And we're not going to hold on to it if we can't fix education. We're sliding seriously in relation to the rest of the developed world. We're just not up there. Then you have where Texas ranks against the rest of the United States, and it ain't good. There was a report at the beginning of the year published by Education Week and the Education Research Center. They had I forget what it's called, one measurement, but it was like this success quotient. It was about how well do we prepare kids to just succeed in life and get along in life, and we were 36th among all the states in the United States. So the country's not doing well in relation to the rest of the world. Texas is not doing well in relation to the rest of the country. In my piece this week, coming up this week on the cover of The Observer, I'm going to talk about how Dallas does in relation to the rest of Texas. And I'll give you the bottom line. Not good. Not good at all. If you compare us to the other big urban districts, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin, we're kind of at the bottom Yeah, we are. It's unbelievable. We spend the second highest amount of any of those urban districts to teach kids. But by a lot of measures, we have the worst district. For example, right now, there are 25 high schools in Texas that are called academically unacceptable. Scattered around these Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin. Houston's a bigger district by a third than we are. We got about 160,000 students. Houston's got about 210,000. I think that Austin is somewhere around 98,000. San Antonio's about 55,000 students. Anyway, it's about like 500,000 students in the big urban districts in Texas. And we have 31% of those students in Dallas. But of these high schools that are no good, well, maybe that's a little harsh. I shouldn't say they're no good. There are good things going on in some of them, but they're rated academically unacceptable. That means they're the worst. According to the state of Texas, Texas Education Agency, they're at the bottom of the barrel in the state. Of those 25 in Texas, we've got 15 of them in Dallas. 15. That's 60% of the academically unacceptable high schools. That's just unbelievable. And there are other numbers. There are, for example, 5 high schools in Texas that when they look at whether the kids that graduate from the high schools meet what they call college readiness standards, they're ready to go to high school. There are 5 high schools where 0% of the students hit that mark. None. Not one kid. And of those 5, 3 are in Dallas. 60%. So the idea that we got a problem here in Dallas is very real. I think we're probably coming up on a break. We'll come back and you can give us all that money that you're waiting. I know you're by the phone waiting to call 972-647-1893 and give us some help. We'll see you again in a minute.
KNON depends on listener support to stay on the air, and now is the time for you to help keep this show on the air. If you like what you're hearing and want to show your appreciation for great community radio, pick up the phone and call to make a pledge. Call 972-647-1893 or go online to knon.org. Don't wait for someone else to do it. Without the support of our listeners, there won't be any community radio on the air in North Texas. So take a few minutes to make a pledge. Call 972-647-1893 or go online to knon.org.
When they're gone for good. This is Scott from KNON's Texas Blues Radio telling you don't miss out on some great blues. KNON's Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 Blues CD. It's a CD put together by real blues fans for real blues fans like you. Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 features great local blues from Michael J. and the Paul Bird Band, JJ and the Detonators, the Chris Watson Band, the Two Tones, Rough Cut Blues Band, Jeff Stone with Charlie Love, Dave Millsap, Sirloin and the Ass Kicking Machine, Tutu Jones, Blues Boy Bo, Buddy Whittington, Andrea Dawson, Kirkland James, Sonny Colley, and Johnny Red and the Roosters. Get a copy now at Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie, Recordtown in Fort Worth, and in Dallas at Bill's Records. This is a Dallas Blues collector's item. A very limited amount of vinyl copies can be found at Forever Young Records, the sponsor of this great blues project. CD downloads are available at cdbaby.com. Whether you get it as a download, on vinyl, or on CD, all the proceeds will benefit KNON. For more info on Texas Blues Radio Volume 5, visit knon.org.
This is William, your videographer for the KNON talk shows. You can watch Get Off My Lawn by going to the knon.org website. Click on schedules to the left side of your screen. Choose Get Off My Lawn's page. Scroll to the bottom of that page, then choose your favorite show to watch or download. This show will be ready for viewing by lunchtime Tuesday. Have a great day.
Schutze back with Get Off My Lawn. I want to remind you that we're still in our pledge drive. Give us a call at 972-647-1893 if you can make a pledge and help keep KNON on the air, help keep diverse and independent voices on the air in Dallas, and help keep the best music station in Dallas on the air at 972-647-1893. We've been talking about school reform, and I mentioned at the top of the show that there's a story in the morning news today about a student walkout at Madison High School. So what's wrong with Madison? Why the students are walking out because they don't want to have their teacher, or their principal, Marion Willard, replaced. Apparently, she's on a list of principals who are going to be replaced. That list will go to the school board next week. Well, let's look at Madison. In 2001, 90% of the seniors took the SAT College Board tests. Of those who took the test, 1.3% achieved a score that would be called college ready by the Texas Education Agency. Given the size of that senior class, 1.3% would mean that 1 1/4 of a student were capable of hitting a college-ready score on the SAT. I don't know where the quarter of a student came from. I dread to think. But basically that means between 1 and 2 kids in that class hit this score. A lot of what's pushing the drive for school reform is a whole bunch of research which says that shouldn't happen. All of the reasons why people say it happens. People are going to talk to you about poverty and bad neighborhoods and tough circumstances that kids come from, and we know that's all true. And Madison in particular has been through some tough changes. A bunch of kids got dumped out of Spruce and were shipped over there temporarily. A lot of Katrina kids went there. And whenever anybody talks about why Madison has such low student achievement records, you're going to hear that story about how tough things are. Yeah, but the research shows that's not an excuse. You can still teach kids from that background up to a lot better level than what they're getting at Madison. Now, it's also true that you got to start early. If a kid is really really way off grade level by the time he or she gets to high school, it's pretty tough to catch him back up. But it's not as if, and here's the point, it's not as if Mike Miles and the school system are coming along and saying, oh, Marion Willard at Madison, it's your fault. These kids aren't at grade level. They know it's not her fault. They know that she got a bunch of kids who weren't at grade level. They've been going for the last year through this meticulous process. They got a 24-page document called the, I'm going to get it wrong, but I think it's called the School Principal Leadership Rubric or Assessment Rubric, something like that. But they have different kinds of staff who are going through all the statistics to see what's going on at each high school compared to other high schools, and they are disaggregating it because one of the chief aims of this reform movement is to do something about the ethnic achievement gap. If you look at the kids who do tend to hit college-ready scores in Dallas's high schools, it's all at Woodrow. It's at Hillcrest. It's the other high school. I'm not thinking of the name of it. That has a remnant white population, and it's the white kids. Yeah, they're doing fine on the SATs. But when you look at the African American kids and the Hispanic kids, they're the ones who are just in the basement. And what Miles is and his team are saying is that's what's got to be corrected. We have to change what's going on in these schools, and we have to find a way, because we know there are ways. We have to find a way so those African American kids and Hispanic kids who come through the system get what they need to be at a much better point when they graduate. Now, some people will say, "Oh, well, not every kid's going to college." Yeah, but how about giving the kid a shot? How about letting the kid make that decision, or the kid's parents? Let's not make the decision for them by holding them in school basically as prisoners, not teaching them to read and do numbers, and then getting them to the senior class. Oh boy, here you are. You've graduated from high school. By the way, you're not prepared to go anywhere else. Your degree prepares you for nothing. That's a scam. That's a crime, and that's what I'm getting from the Miles leadership. It is a lot more what I get from Hispanic leadership, LULAC and so on. Look, they got Miles's back on this, on the school reform thing. What's the difference? What is the change? Oh, hey, I forgot. Julia, sorry, you've been hanging here on line 3. Are you still with me? Julia, did you give up on me? You decided that guy is never going to shut up and listen to me. Julia, I hope you'll call me back. I'm sorry. That was very rude of me. I forgot you were there. Call me back. So what's the difference? Why is African American leadership in particular so upset about this school reform thing? Well, I don't know. Which African American leadership? Who are we talking about? Who's got a dog in this hunt? If you look at the ranks of the principals in the school district, the number of principals who are African American is way higher than the student population or the population out in the city. The city's now at about 24% African American. The schools are at about the same. The schools are at about 70% Hispanic, and then 5% white. So the student body is about a quarter black. The populace of the city is about a quarter black. But the ranks of the principals in the school district are between 50 and 55% African American. And that reflects long struggle in the city. There are reasons why that happened. Dallas was, I always call it the city that made Little Rock look reasonable. This was a tough nut to crack for the civil rights movement and for the forces of integration and equal opportunity. And one of the places where the fight was toughest was in the assigning of those good, well-paid, relatively well-paid jobs within the school district. As whites ditched out of the system, generally, turned their backs on it, went to the suburbs or private schools, they sort of turned it over as part of a political deal to African American leadership. And so those they didn't turn it over entirely. These numbers are interesting. Black people occupy a majority of the principals' jobs. If you get up into the middle range of salaries at DISD, black people do less well. They got about 30% of the jobs, and I think African Americans Hispanics have 17%, and white people have the rest. When you get up into the fat end of the salary scale at DISD, $89,000 a year and above, or $80,000 a year and above, I believe this is right, white people hold 89% of those jobs. So the whites have still got a lock on the top jobs in the district. The principals tend to be more African American than the populace of the city would reflect. So you have a lot of vested interest in holding on to those jobs. And I think that the leadership that is fighting Miles on these changes tends to revolve around the people who hold those jobs. There are other black leaders to talk to in this city about this issue who tend to see it quite differently. I had a really good long conversation with Michael Sorrell, president of Paul Quinn College. And, Sorrell's line, because he's seeing the kids who come out of the school system, he's seeing the ambitious kids, especially ambitious black and Hispanic kids who want to go on to college, and he knows how hard it is for them because of how badly they've been prepared. And Sorrell has got Miles's back. He's supporting him in this. I want to back off for a second and talk about what it is they're doing. What is the change they want? What do they want to do in the schools? I started with this morning, this essay by this woman, Marty Walker, who's a former Golden Apple Teacher of the Year at DISD, and she writes about how the DISD is using, quote, militaristic tactics. And it's all about the headline is "No Winning Through Intimidation." Well, that sounds terrible. They're going out there using militaristic tactics to intimidate people. Oh my gosh, that sounds awful. So let's back off and look a little bit at what they are doing. For the story I have that's coming out next week in the Observer, I had a long conversation with a gentleman named Leslie Williams, who's one of the middle management guys in the district who go out to the principals and to the teachers and tell them what the change is. Here's what you have to do. Here's the new deal. Here's what Miles wants in the classroom. And when you listen to it, it seems pretty hard to argue with. First of all, they're saying that the teachers need to know what they're supposed to teach. In Texas, that's a matter of law. The state lays down what's called a core curriculum, and the district calls that the standard. If you're a teacher, do you know what by law your kids have to learn this year? So they want to make sure the teachers know that. That seems reasonable. It seems like they ought to know it. Then they want to know, can you as a teacher do what they call unpack it? Can you take this set of knowledge and take it apart and present it to a kid in a way that'll work, in a way so the kid will get it? And that's up to the teacher. They don't tell the teacher how to do that. They say, you as a teacher use your creativity and discretion to figure out your own lesson plan. We're not going to come in here and hand you a lesson plan because you know your students, you know your kids, you know their parents, you know what they need, and you know yourself, and you know what works for you. So you come up with your own lesson plan, but we kind of want to know how it's going to go because we want to be satisfied that you will be able to take this core curriculum and, as they say, unpack it and explain it to the kids. Then the next big thing they talk about is engagement. And it's kind of a byword that you hear a lot from them. They want the teachers to engage the students. And we had a gentleman here on the show a few weeks ago who was a math teacher, was talking about this very same thing. As Leslie Williams put it to me, it's kind of, think of it as just selling it. They want to know that the teacher is getting up from behind that desk and trying to sell it to the kids. If you're teaching math, they don't want you to just stick it on the blackboard and say, there it is, learn it. They really want you to get out in front of those kids, look at them eyeball to eyeball, and figure out some way to get them excited about math. And hey, this seems like a good idea to me. Now, this is all in the abstract. Everything's great in the abstract. How does it work out in the real world? And we'll talk about that a little more in the final section. There are a lot of teachers who have, I think, really legitimate complaints about how this hits them. I don't think it has to do with Miles. It has to do with their principles. But the plan itself seems pretty reasonable. And the last bit of the plan is that the kids are supposed to really get it. They have a term now, they call this a demonstration of learning. That's like a jargon term. As this man, Leslie Williams, explained it to me, it's kind of like a thumbs up, thumbs down. At the end of every lesson, the teacher gets up in front of the kids and says, okay, so if we add one apple to another apple, is that going to be 2 apples? What do you think? And if you think it's 2 apples, you put your thumb up, and if you don't know, or you think it's 8 apples, you put your thumb down. And so that way the teacher says, okay, my thumbs up kids are the ones who get it, and my thumbs down kids are the ones who don't, and I need to work with them more. Some of them might need tutoring, need to go back over it. But they're just saying to the teachers, and sometimes it's more than that, it's a quiz. They're saying, make sure the kids get it. It's your job to either make sure they get it or for you to know that they don't get it. So you're going to have to do more work so they get it. And that's not exactly brand new. That's been around for years. They used to call it an exit ticket. You have to have an exit ticket to get out of one lesson and go to the next. All these principles, all these elements of this reform have been around forever. They're just being put together with a different emphasis. And that's what the Miles reform is all about. As I say, we'll talk more about how it works in real life. It ain't always perfect. There are problems, I think. But the basic elements of the reform sound pretty good. Don't we want the kids to get it? And don't we think if the law says there's a basic body of knowledge they have to have in order to be done with school, don't we want to make sure they get that basic body of knowledge? This is Pledge Drive Week, by the way. Give us a call at 972-647-1893. And I think that we're about to go on another break. Michael, we got you on one. I hope you can wait for us through the break, and we'll be back and hear what you have to say about this. It's Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn. See you back in a minute.
Knon would like to thank you for supporting community radio. Your donations continue to keep the voice of the people on the air. Did you know that many companies offer a matching donation when you make a pledge to KNON? Ask your company if they have a matching program. When your employer matches your pledge, KNON reaches its goal twice as fast, bringing you more of the music you love.
Coming this Saturday, KNON pays tribute to one of the greatest dives ever by presenting the Bar of Soap reunion at Wits End at the corner of Crowdis and Elm Streets in Deep Ellum. Doors open at 4 p.m. and the music kicks off right away on 2 stages with the Blue Flames, Girl, The Criminals, Donnie Ray Ford and the Midnight Ramblers, the Barry Cuda Combo, the Spit Sonny Ed and the Duval Combo, the Harmonaires, the Brass Knuckle Band, Dragna, a reunion of the Fed Ups and Plunger, and Responsible Johnny with DJs Mr. Rid, Charlie Don't Park, and Al Wildcat. Poetry by Jim O'Brien and more. It's BYOM, that's Bring Your Own Meat, because the grills will be lit. Tickets are on sale now at knon.org, and even if you didn't go to the Bar of Soap, you do not want to miss this event. KNON played all these bands at one time or another, so you know they are some of the finest. By the punks, for the punks. That's the Bar of Soap reunion at Wits End this Saturday, May 18th, starting at 4 p.m. This is a KNON benefit event.
Hey, babes, take one.
Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn. We're in the middle of Pledge Drive. We're only $10,000 away from our goal. Michael, are you calling me with $10,000?
What was the question?
Oh, it's not. It's a question. It's not $10,000.
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. All right. I misunderstood.
No, I pledged last week on Gene's show. I'll probably give you a couple of dollars of it.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much,
help
Michael.
me out.
Okay, I appreciate it. 10,000, it's a lot to ask, I know. If you give us 10,000, Michael, I will come live at your house for the rest of your life.
Well, see, giving it to you, it would hurt you. Giving it to you, see, you got to earn it.
That would make. You're right. That would make me. That would make me dependent. That's right. I don't want to be dependent.
That's, we don't want to be part of the problem.
Yeah, don't give me that $10,000.
Yeah, you have to earn it.
Keep that money away from me, please.
But on the school deal, well, I know where that 1.25 came from for the students.
Yeah.
It probably came from the Constitution, because them black students wasn't why they were considered 3/5 human,
Oh, God.
So that's probably where it came from.
Yeah.
The trickle-down effect.
Okay.
1.25 students, I don't know, so
yeah.
That's where I figure it come from.
Yeah,
But some of them black kids, see, what I would like to know, how white kids would do if from 1st to 12th grade they went to school and 90% of the stuff they learned was about black people. I wonder how enthused they would be about our education system.
Well, Michael, that's a very interesting point, because what part of this research that says that you can teach any kid up to full literacy and numeracy by the end of 3rd grade goes to exactly what you're saying. You can't do it if you put a reading book in front of the kid that is like, to the kid it's about life on the moon. Mom and dad load up Dick and Jane in the SUV and take them for their play date. And to a lot of kids, none of these materials just don't have anything to do with the world around them. You can't teach a kid a word if it's a word about something he's never seen. And so part of the reform and the change is that, yes, that's part of this deal of engaging the students. You gotta go to them. You got to go to their world, what they know, what they understand. You're exactly right. You can't teach them to read if it's reading about some world they know nothing about, they don't care about, it's foreign.
Well, what about the students, that's pretty, smart, and what about the black students that got a problem with going to a school that's named after a president that owned slaves, didn't even have the decency to consider them as a human being when they wrote the Constitution of America. So what about that psychological part? Because if I had to go to school, I graduated high school. I went to community college and got some certifications and stuff. If I had to go through this American school system, when I got proficient in reading, writing, and math, where I could multiply and count money when I get a job, I would drop out. Because why in the world I want to be worrying about some president that owned slaves and had children by slaves? Why in the hell do I want to? And he didn't even have the decency to consider me as a full human being.
There's research. There's research that's been done all over the world, and I wrote about this guy.
Whose research?
And I can't. Pardon me?
Whose research? White people research or black people research?
This guy happens to be African. He's not African American. He's an African sociologist. And he's done research all over the world in which he's shown that this principle you're basically talking about, it's called oppositional culture, works the same everywhere. If you're in Ireland and you got a bunch of English people forcing English-style education down the throats of Irish Catholic kids, it doesn't work. If you're in South Africa, if you're wherever, it doesn't. you can't educate kids if they feel a basic historical hostility to the culture of the teacher and the culture that's being taught them. They don't want to work. They don't want to learn it. They're not encouraged to learn it anywhere in their culture. They're encouraged to resist it.
That's why I talked to you before about trying to force geometry down some kid's throat that don't want to have nothing to do with it.
Well, geometry's not white.
No, I know it. It ain't white.
All right.
It's a course that a lot of them kids will drop out because they forced to take it.
Well, but if you get to them when they're little and you sell them math and you show them that they're good at math, that they're smart, that they can do math, and that's what this gentleman who came here
was. People with math just want to know they can count their money at the end of the day.
Well, math is really, really important, and you don't ever want to let black children or Hispanic children get the idea that there's something white about math.
Well, one last question. No, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, reading is reading, writing is writing, counting is counting, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no white toilet tissue and black toilet tissue. Both of them use both of the race use it the same way.
Yeah.
You know. But one last thing about America is always 49th in math and 34th in engineering. So who's taking those tests that are failing, that are putting us that low on the world scale?
Well, we all
in education.
We all are.
Because I don't never hear about no white independent school districts failing.
No, the white kids, if you compare the white kids aren't doing that great. If you compare the white kids let's go back to your original point. Which has to do with the background kids come from. If you take white kids and you say we got a bunch of kids from a pretty privileged, soft, middle-class background with a lot of advantages, let's go over to Europe and compare these white kids to kids from the same background over there, to Japan, to a lot of the world. What you find is that our white kids are not measuring up to the same class of kids in other countries. Our failure in education is general and across the board. And Michael, thank you for calling.
All right,
I agreed with a bunch of your points.
Yeah.
The bottom line that Miles gets to when you talk to him is that he says, look, this story that we're going out there like a bunch of jackboots, we've got this arbitrary system, we're just picking out people we don't like and lining them up for execution. He says that's not true. He says that the basic fairness of the reform is very important to him. And anybody could say that, right? You got a reporter sitting there taking notes. Of course that's what you're going to say. But he goes on to say, what's fair? What is his definition of fair? And I listened. And what he said was, it's only fair if you tell people what they got to do. If you make it very explicit, this is what has to be done. And both for the principals and for the teachers, here's the mark. Here's what we want you to do. And that goes back to this, what they want to have happening in the classroom. They want to make sure that the teacher knows what to teach and that the teacher knows how to teach it and that the kids get it. So you got to have that expectation. Then he says it's only fair if you're very careful about monitoring whether or not they're hitting that mark. And you can't have, there are a whole bunch of different ways to, for example, to evaluate teachers. It used to just be the principal who would evaluate the teacher. And there's a lot of research that Miles is very tuned into that shows that that doesn't work, that's not fair. The teacher's got other agendas. So you have to have other people out there. The principal has other agendas. So you got to have other eyes on the teacher. Let the principal go do these assessments. The principal should be in the classrooms. But you got to have other people doing a check on that. And so you have a bunch of measurements. So, and same for the principal. You got to have a bunch of different ways. And as I say, they have this 24-page document. It's got like 50 different items in it to measure how the principal's doing. So you have to be very careful to measure how the principal's doing. So you told them what they got to do. You've measured whether they're doing it. Now, what do you do with the people who are not doing it, who are not hitting the mark, who are not ringing the bell? And he says there's this general impression that, oh, they're all going to be fired. He says that's not true. He says, in this process of evaluating principals, they have a lot of principals who started out on the not making it list, the ones who are going to have to be replaced, who were taken off that list because in the process of going through all this, the principals, who are smart people, said, aha, I see what they want, I'll go do that. And they were taken off the list. A lot of other principals have been given a chance to take another job, like assistant principal somewhere else. They're not being canned, they're not losing their pensions, they're being given another job. There's another factor in here that doesn't get into the news coverage much, but some of the principals who are on this list are not on it because of academic reasons. They've got what are called Office of Professional Responsibility Problems, OPR. That gets into money. That gets into other issues. Those are kind of like legal investigations. And so some of them have got those problems, and that's another deal. I think when this list goes public next week, and it's, we've been hearing about 50 principals, like, it always sounds like they're going to line up 50 principals against the wall and shoot them. I think it's going to be less than half a dozen. Because the other thing going on here is behind the scenes, the principals have been negotiating deals. The two main principals in this thing are Leslie Swan, the ones who've had the most political activity around them, Leslie Swan at Lincoln and Marion Willard at Madison. If I had to bet money, I'll bet that they'll be retired by the time this all comes out next week. That they will have negotiated their exit packages to their satisfaction. So it's way less turnover than it's made to sound like. And it all, I said in the previous section, I was going to talk about what goes wrong. A lot goes wrong because you have this reform and it's getting translated down to the teachers through the ranks of the principals. Well, you got principals who are nervous and scared, and some of them aren't that smart, and they misinterpret the instructions, and so they're going in nervously and haranguing the teachers all day long. You got to do this, you got to do that, or I'll get fired. And that drives the teachers crazy. And I think there has been a genuine burden of anxiety and uncertainty that falls on the teachers, which is terrible. It's too bad it works that way. It tends to be true in all big, complicated institutions that by the time the change gets translated all the way down the line, the message changes a lot as it goes from person to person. It's like that pass-it-on game. It doesn't always get to the end of the line the way it was intended, and I'm sure there's been a lot of that in the district, and I'm sure the teachers will feel a lot better when this thing gets sorted out a bit more, when the heat is, especially when it gets sorted out for the principals, so the heat is sort of off the principals, so the principals will stop putting the heat on the teachers. That is a day to be hoped for and looked forward to, but it goes back to the question of why and the terrible failure of this school system to prepare these kids, and the fact that it doesn't have to be that way. What Miles is doing, every element of what he's doing comes right out of the research. There's been a lot of research done to show that you can figure out who the effective teachers are and the ineffectual teachers are. You can figure out who the good principals are and the bad ones are. And there are ways to do it. There are specific methods of doing it. And all those methods are exactly what Miles is doing. He's not marching around like some jackboot crazy man. He's following this plan that's absolutely supported by the research, and they're taking what, when you drill down into it, what winds up seeming like a very reasonable, careful, methodical approach. This is pledge drive here still in Knon. We're drawing to the close. We need you to close it for us. We're at 972-647-1893. 972-647-1893. You can be the closer here. You can carry us over the top. Your pledge keeps us on the air. It keeps Lambda Weekly on the air. It keeps Workers Beat on the air. It keeps Marion Barnett on the air. It keeps all that great music on the air. This is Dallas's best music station, especially for independent music. You just can't get the independent music anywhere else anymore. And you can't get independent talk anywhere else anymore. I think one thing you can say about the talk shows on KNON is that we're not always telling you what you want to hear. And you may be uncomfortable with that at some times, but you know, the talk guys on commercial radio, all they do is preach to the choir. They tell the listeners what they want to hear so they can, build up the audience and sell more ads. KNON has much more of a principle of giving you challenging talk shows. It may not be what you want to hear, but you're welcome to call in and say what you want to say. And it's that independence that sets KNON apart. And anyway.
The rest of the world may not know this, but Jim, you were also nominated as Best Columnist in Dallas this year. I voted for you several times.
Oh, thanks very much. You didn't vote enough times, though.
Oh, well, I think you are the best columnist in Dallas, and we are really we are very blessed to have you on this station doing this show.
Thanks very much. I promise I did not vote for myself. I swear. There are a lot of people with my same name. You probably run into them all the time. Some of them may have voted for Jim Schutze, but it wasn't me. And it's great to be here, and I'm grateful to KNON for allowing me to come and harangue everybody on Saturdays. And I hope that you can help us out in this next hour with your gift at 972-647-1893. Jim Schutze, get off my lawn. We'll see you next week.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
You are listening to KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas, Fort Worth. Pledge now. Call 972-647-1893 now to make your pledge.